Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Hello. Greetings from beautiful Park City, Utah. I'm with Dr. Jeremy Weisz here. We're going to get started in a second. I'm the host of the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where I talk with CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations like YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable, Act Software, and many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise25 with Dr. Weisz here. And what we do is we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And today we're going to be talking about a popular topic that I think a lot of people are struggling with these days. And that is, how do you network at a virtual event? We're recording this, of course, in mid-September 2020. We had the global pandemic happening for the last 6 months or so. And a lot of people are doing virtual events, but they're wondering, how do you build relationships? How do you connect with strategic partners? How do you connect with the referral partners? All the things that you do normally when you go to a face-to-face event or to a conference or something like that, how do you do it in the virtual world that we live in today? So we're going to be talking about that. But first, before we get into that, first of all, my guest is Dr. Jeremy Weisz. Dr. Jeremy Weisz needs no introduction, but he's been doing his Inspired Insider podcast for 10 years now. Even before that, he's been advising podcasters on, particularly in the B2B space, on how to get the most out of a podcast, how to connect with referral partners, strategic partners, how to get clients, all that kind of stuff. He really was an early leader in this space. So I'm honored to be business partners with him. And I'm honored to also interview him on this topic today, because he's also one of the most well-networked people that I know, knows a tremendous number of people and really has some great strategies. So we're going to get into that in a moment. But first, before we do, this episode is brought to you by Rise25, which is our business helping B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And if you're listening to this and you've ever thought, should I start a podcast? Well, we absolutely say yes.
The answer is always yes. No.
Answer is always yes, of course. But you know what?
But we always say that, John, even before it was self-serving, we would say the same thing. Right. Before we even did this, we would say the exact same thing.
Right. I mean, I've been, you and I have both been podcasting for about 10 years. We both started around the same time. And for about 7 of those years, there was no vested interest whatsoever. And even now, I often say to people, we can only serve a tiny fraction of the number of people who will start a podcast. And so first and foremost, I think we're both evangelists for the medium, because the medium of podcasting is an amazing emerging field. It's growing like crazy, but also such tremendous value has come to my life from my friendship and business partnership with you to other tremendous friendships and collaborations and you name it, connections that have come from podcasting. And so that's just why we're crazy about it. So if you have any questions, you can go to rise25media.com. You can also email support@rise25media.com. All right. So Dr. Weisz, the topic is how to network at a virtual event. And there's all kinds of different events, right? There's conferences, there's small little mastermind groups types of things. There's meetings that you have within your company or externally with other types of meetings. So let's break this down. We've identified 5 different tips, 5 different strategies that you should be thinking about. But let's start with you. First of all, what are your thoughts in this virtual world that we're living in these days? How can you make the most of virtual events?
Yeah, this is a great topic, because also whether you are, when we were live, I'm not saying, John, I'm introverted, but I am not like needing to be the center of attention. So I wouldn't say I'm like a wallflower type of person, but I just don't, I'm more comfortable with one-on-one rather than a big group. So I would tend to do this stuff naturally. And the same applies to live events or virtual, which is to research people in advance. Right. Yeah. And so you can make your world smaller when you get there. So the same applies for a virtual event. Research people in advance. And so oftentimes there's a directory Like if you are part of a virtual group, this could be you're part of a virtual meeting mastermind. Like we know, shout out to Kevin Thompson. He runs a great virtual group. Alex Neum runs a virtual group. Joe Polish runs a great group, and a lot of it right now is virtual. And Brian Kurtz also. How do you add value to the group and basically meet more people? Well, you research them ahead of time. There's usually a directory. There's usually a Facebook group or a Slack channel or some kind of social channel. And if there's not, like, I know, John, when we went to Traffic Conversion, there's channels that people are saying, hey, who's going? And you can find out who's going.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a great point. Even if there isn't a listing somewhere, you can go on social media and you can search for, oftentimes there's a dedicated hashtag that's assigned to the conference, or you can just look for the name of the conference or the event that you're going to. And sometimes people have posted there. Yeah. And so, you can reach out to those people. You can connect with people that way.
Yeah. And so like reaching out to them in advance and clicking on them. And usually I will just dialogue with people to find out what they're working on, what their business is, what the website I should be checking out, and having a dialogue with each of them. And it's easy to do. Like if you're in Facebook group and you just click on them and message them, you go and you can click on them and even check their website out ahead of time and actually make a comment on it and actually, be interested in what they're working on, like truly Absolutely. Interested.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's and then sometimes, I even went to an event, this was a while ago now, where there was a special app that people downloaded, and not everyone had downloaded it, but a lot of people had, and a lot of people had uploaded profiles in there. So you could go directly in there and you could learn about these people. But that makes a big difference, is researching people in advance, because it narrows it down. And I remember going to a conference once where someone came up to me and said, hey, I saw that you were coming and I wanted to make the opportunity to talk with you. Because we hadn't met before or something like that. Now he might've been blowing smoke. I don't know. Maybe he said that to everyone, but that made a big impression on me. I remember it now, someone said that to me, and you could do the same thing.
It's going through the extra effort. And when you do that, you can add more value to the group and the people who are organizing and appreciate that. I remember I was in a virtual group, and someone asked about some resource, and I tagged someone else in the group because I had researched them. So I was making connections with inside the group, and I'd never talked to them before, but I saw, someone was asking about this service. I said, and I tagged two people. I said, hey, you may be interested in this. And they totally appreciated me doing that. But the only reason I could do that is because I researched them in advance and I connected with them in advance, and I added value to them.
Yeah, this is point number one, but it really could be points 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you put this extra effort in at the outset, or even in real time, when you do that research and you take the extra effort of figuring out who they are, what they do, what their background is, what you might have in common. And this happened with me earlier today. It wasn't in the context of an event that was happening in real time, but I think this example could work for a real event as well. But I looked up the person on LinkedIn, and just in 2 minutes of researching his background, I saw all these things that we had in common. And so I messaged the guy back and I said, here's all these things we have in common. It just makes such a bigger impression, and it allows you to form that much better connection and bond with them. Yeah. So that's number one. So point number two.
Yeah.
What's point number two?
And just to finish up point number one, when you get into the bigger group, you already know half the people or all the people have connected to them. So it just makes the group feel like a group of your friends.
Yeah.
Actually, as opposed to going into a bunch of faces that you don't know.
You brought up a great point, which I want to circle back to, about introversion. Because I hear people say that all the time. I feel a little introverted. I don't feel comfortable in bigger groups. And actually, I think some of the best networkers out there are introverted. Yeah. Because, we all know gregarious people who suck the oxygen out of a room, or they make a big impression or something like that. Some of those people, the truth is they don't do a great job of building relationships, building connections, deepening that relationship, taking it further, because they might make a big impression, but they don't do a good job of taking it further, doing the extra effort, going the extra mile. And oftentimes someone who's a little bit more introverted or a lot introverted can really overcompensate or outcompete with someone who you would think is much more gregarious, because they do a better job of following up, taking it further, taking the relationship further.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's number one. A little research goes a long way. Obviously, the second one that we were talking about, which is in real time, meaning you're on the virtual meeting, reach out to people and message them.
And you gotta, kudos to you for this, because I know you do this, but sometimes when you're on a meeting with a lot of people, you're having individual messages. You're messaging people individually, even if it's something short, just like, hey, saw you're on here, wanted to say hello, or we should connect later, or how are you doing, or anything like that.
I mean, it's actually an advantage, the virtual events, right? Because if you're sitting, at a conference listening to someone talk or keynote, you can't be like, hey, John, good to see you. Like, but in this situation, let's say there's 30 faces there, and, let's say, Paul Bigham, for instance, was on one of the calls, and I just messaged him like, Paul, oh my God, we haven't talked in forever. We need to catch up. Right. And so I just messaged him, he messaged me back, and just reaching out to the people on the call is not like, this also kind of goes into, if you research people ahead of time in advance, you can also have those individual conversations. If you don't know them, it'd be kind of weird to do that. But even so, I think we were on a call with one person and or with a group of people, and I just checked out I Googled them really quickly, and I just clicked on their website and I checked it out. And then I messaged them. I go, oh my God, I'm on your website. I love this video of you. I'm just looking at it right now. And so even not knowing them, you can still show them, like, do the research real time. Like, you're there in the call. I mean, sometimes you're not 100% focused on the speaker, but you can be pulling the person's website up and LinkedIn profile up. Like you mentioned, you have something in common. You could pull that person and go, oh my God, you're from San Francisco too? Like, wow. Like we're close together. So you could do that stuff real time. You're on the call already. You might as well connect with people and make it deeper.
Yeah. Or, just, I think people underestimate the power of a sincere compliment. So just even following up after someone has made a remark or asked a good question in this group or this community, this online forum, and just saying, hey, I really appreciated that question. Really appreciated your insight. Liked what you brought to the table there. Just something like that, as long as it's sincere, I think that can go a long way as well.
I totally agree, because some people, I mean, all of us, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for all of us, myself, sometimes you speak out and you feel slightly self-conscious. There's a large group. Should I be talking? Should I make a comment? And when someone does, you're kind of putting yourself out there. And so, just showing that support, it goes a long way.
Yeah. And that actually leads into our third point, which is to, when appropriate, when you feel comfortable doing it, to contribute, to speak up, to ask an educated question, or to make a comment of some sort. So talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten better of this over the years. I still feel slightly self-conscious giving advice or sharing something, but I do that now. It used to be, Jen, it's funny because like one other person who like maybe I would respect would follow up with a specific comment, and I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, well, I don't know, should I say something or not? I'm like, damn it, I should have said that. That's the exact same thing I would have said.
Yeah.
And so I've been better at sharing those things and doing that. But I think, you don't need to be just the presenter to contribute or speak up. And you're really good at this, actually. I think, you're way better than me at this, is engaging the group by asking a very educated question. And you do that very well.
The funny thing is, though, I think back, like me in college and even law school, like I often wasn't that person. For me personally, it depends on the room. Like if it's a really big room, I'm much less likely to speak. If it's a smaller room, I feel more comfortable with the group of people, then I'm more likely to speak.
Yeah.
But sometimes, honestly, like this is a strategy I use particularly in law school. I would try and speak very early in the beginning of a session, because that would calm my nerves once I'd spoken once, and I'd feel much better, and I'd feel much more engaged and willing to speak more as it went along. And I think that's something you can apply to virtual or in-person events.
Yeah. And I want to point something out about asking an educated question or making a comment. I think what goes a long way too is vulnerability. And so if you're asking a question, not like bragging or making comment bragging, but like actually saying something like, you know what, we love your feedback because this is something we're really working on or struggling with. There's other people that appreciate, one, you come from that place, and two, other people may be struggling or facing the same challenge and they really appreciate it. And so it really creates a great dialogue.
And the flip side of that is, we all have seen where there's someone who's boasting, right? Or who's kind of what's the word for the humble brag, right? And you don't want to be that person. I think that you can create much deeper connections with people when you do show that vulnerability, when you do share something that you're challenged by, that you're working on, because chances are there are other people, and I'm not saying that you have to be totally, bare your soul or anything like that. There's oversharing, right? Too much
John, you told me to be vulnerable.
I know, exactly.
Everyone turned on me.
Right.
No,
right. No, I know if someone's going to tell me that, I'd be like, but you don't want to overdo it, but definitely vulnerable. I think that's a great point. So that's point number 3. Point number 4, this is a great one, is to show appreciation. Share, Jeremy.
Yeah.
What
listen, the organizer and the people in charge spend a lot of time and energy putting these things together and coordinating. And when we helped run live events, like when people give you and show appreciation for the work and energy that you put into it, it goes a long way. And just reaching out to the organizers and the people, just telling them, being real specific with, I love how you ran this part and you started off with the wins and then you went to channel or whatever. Maybe it was the format or maybe it was the way they ran it, whatever it is, showing appreciation is big.
Yeah. Yeah. I can say the same thing, having done events with you over the years. When someone comes up to you and say, I really appreciate you doing that, whether it's, you put together a large event or a small event, and people show that appreciation, it definitely goes a long way and makes you remember that person in particular. So finally, point number 4 is really about, going deeper.
Number 5.
Point number 5. Thank you. Point number 1 was about what you do beforehand or in real time, and that's actually putting some effort in.
Yeah, it kind of takes people through this whole cycle, right?
Right.
Research in advance. What do you do real time? What do you do, right afterwards? And then now what do you do beyond just right afterwards?
Right. And what do you do?
Well, you go deeper. So how do you go deeper? Right.
Yeah.
And the best way we have seen in the past 10 years is obvious, right? It's, there's ways to deliver value to someone after the fact. And what we find is when you feature
Wait, let me interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know what it is. You tell them how great your service is and you ask them if you can do a sales call with them the very next day. No, during the coffee break, can you hold them down and sell them on your service? That is that what you're going to say?
That's second. No, but yeah, exactly. So delivering more value to them. How do you continue to build the relationship, deliver more value, and delivering more value by featuring them? And we find featuring someone in an interview on your podcast and then profiling them on your podcast, which then goes across, 17, 20 different channels, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and social media and all those, it continuously gives to them.
Yeah, and the truth is, it's a world in which you have to be creating content, just like we're doing right now. You have to be creating content so you're not dead in the eyes of Google. You'll only be doing that, but content can also be a tool for deepening and establishing relationships with people in your life. And you and I both started in this journey about 10 years ago. Some of the best relationships I've ever had have been from someone that you make an initial connection with, whether it's at an event, whether it's a virtual meeting, whether it's an introduction from someone, and then how do you take that relationship further? And no better way of doing it than to take the time and to delve into their story, ask them questions,
Totally.
learn about them, and then share that with others.
Yeah.
And
Example would be like we get off all these the time. I was just it just continues the relationship. I got off the phone with Dr. Hobie Wedler, right? Who you'll be chatting, and afterwards, like, well, how do you follow up? We had a great conversation. I'm like, hey, like you are really an inspiring guy. Like this guy is one of the most inspiring people. I'm like, let's have a follow-up conversation. Well, why not share it with the world? So let's schedule a follow-up conversation, but let me have you on my podcast and then I'll share your story with everyone from our conversation. So it's just, I'm going to have the opportunity to have him on and deeper the conversation. We're going to have the conversation anyways. You might as well record it and, really have other people learn about him.
Right. And for the busier and busier the person, the more it makes a difference to have their time be dual purpose or multi-purpose, So, if you reach out with the CEO of a Fortune 100 company and you say, hey, I'd love to do like an informational, just like 15-minute call with you. You got time? That cool? I know you have 15,000 people that you oversee, and I know you got a P&L for multi-billion-dollar that you need to, take responsibility for, but, could you take 15 minutes? No, it's not going to happen. Right. But I've been constantly amazed at busy, important, prestigious people that will give me a slice of their day. And then as a result, as a consequence of that, then they'll give you more slices of their day because then they know you, then they trust you, then you build a relationship with you. And so it's a wonderful tool for that. And it's a wonderful way of delivering value to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to recap, Jeremy, number one,
research people in advance.
Okay.
Social channels, directory, Facebook groups, in real time, reach out. And especially if you already did the people in advance, then contribute during and actually speak up, ask you questions, show appreciation for the people, who are making comments and asking questions, and then show appreciation afterwards to the host or the other people, not just the host, but there's, people behind the scenes that are working on it. And then go deeper with the people that you want to go deeper with and connect with them later and feature them.
Now, one of the things that you are really good at, to just wrap things up here, is to leave any kind of interview like this with a question that actually serves a dual purpose of creating great content and also deepens those connections, just like we've been talking about here. So let me ask you. So you mentioned a few earlier, but who are some of the virtual events that you've either participated in or that you've had your eye on that are doing it right, that are doing a great job right now?
Yeah, obviously, I think I follow a lot what Jason Swank does. He has he's an amazing podcast. If you're an agency owner, we mentioned Kevin Thompson, Alex Neem, Joe Polish, and Brian Kurtz running their virtual events. And then just other podcasts that I know we follow are Dean Dutro's podcast and Chris Dreyer's podcast of rankings. He has some amazing guests on also. So those are some of the people that I think others should check out.
Great job. All right. So that's it from us. Wrapping things up for the next few days, Utah, and from Chicago, Illinois, Dr. Weisz, thank you so much.
If we weren't right at the hour, we do our people are waiting for your favorite Tommy Boy quote.
But we got to go. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.